you." "What do you mean?" "Mean? I could have told you he wasn't hurt 5 minutes ago. Give me the light, friend. Ride forward at a gentler pace, and good night." In handing up the lantern the man necessarily cast its rays full on the speaker's face. Their eyes met at the instant. He suddenly dropped it and crushed it with his foot. "Did you never see a locksmith before, that you start as if you had come upon a ghost?" cried the old man in the chaise. "Or is this," he added hastily, thrusting his hand into the tool basket and drawing out a hammer, "a scheme for robbing me? I know these roads, friend. When I travel them I carry nothing but a few shillings, and not a crown's worth of them. I tell you plainly, to save us both trouble, that there's nothing to be got from me but a pretty stout arm, considering my years, and this tool, which, mayhap from long acquaintance with, I can use pretty briskly. You shall not have it all your own way, I promise you, if you play at that game." With these words he stood upon the defensive. "I am not what you take me for, Gabriel Varden," replied the other. "Then what and who are you?" returned the locksmith. "You know my name, it seems. Let me know yours." "I have not gained the information from any confidence of yours, but from the inscription on your cart, which tells it to all the town," replied the traveller. "You have better eyes for that than you had for your horse, then," said Varden, descending nimbly from his chaise. "Who are you? Let me see your face." While the locksmith alighted, the traveller had regained his saddle, from which he now confronted the old man, who, moving as the horse moved in chafing under the tightened rein, kept close beside him. "Let me see your face, I say." "Stand off." "No masquerading tricks," said the locksmith, "and tales at the club to-morrow, how Gabriel Varden was frightened by a surly voice in a dark night. Stand! Let me see your face." Finding that further resistance would only involve him in a personal struggle with an antagonist by no means to be despised, the traveller threw back his coat, and stooping down looked steadily at the locksmith. Perhaps two men more powerfully contrasted never opposed each other face to face. The ruddy features of the locksmith so set off and heightened the excessive paleness of the man on horseback that he looked like a bloodless ghost, while the moisture which hard riding had brought out upon his skin hung there in darkened heavy drops, like dews of agony and death. The countenance of the old locksmith lighted up with the smile of one expecting to detect in this unpromising stranger some latent roguery of eye or lip, which should reveal a familiar person in that arch disguise, and spoil his jest. The face of the other, sullen and fierce, but shrinking too, was that of a man who stood at bay, while his firmly closed jaws, his puckered mouth, and more than all a certain stealthy motion of the hand within his breast, seemed to announce a desperate purpose very foreign to acting or child's play. Thus they regarded each other for some time in silence. "Humph!" he said, when he had scanned his features. "I don't know you." "Don't desire to?" returned the other, muffling himself as before. "I don't," said Gabriel. "To be plain with you, friend, you don't carry in your countenance a letter of recommendation." "It's not my wish," said the traveller. "My humour is to be avoided." "Well," said the locksmith bluntly, "I think you'll have your humour." "I will at any cost," rejoined the traveller. "In proof of it, lay this to heart, that you were never in such peril of your life as you have been within these last few moments. When you are within 5 minutes of breathing your last, you will not be nearer death than you have been to-night." "Ay," said the sturdy locksmith. "Ay, and a violent death." "From whose hand?" "From mine," replied the traveller. With that he put spurs to his horse and rode away, at first plashing heavily through the mire at a smart trot, but gradually increasing in speed until the last sound of his horse's hoofs died away upon the wind, when he was again hurrying on at the same furious gallop which had been his pace when the locksmith first encountered him. Gabriel Varden remained standing in the road with the broken lantern in his hand, listening in stupefied silence until no sound reached his ear but the moaning of the wind and the fast-falling rain, when he struck himself one or two smart blows in the breast by way of rousing himself, and broke into an exclamation of surprise. "What in the name of wonder can this fellow be? A madman? A highwayman? A cut-throat? If he had not scoured off so fast, we'd have seen who was in most danger, he or I. I never nearer death than I have been to-night. I hope I may be no nearer to it for a score of years to come. If so, I'll be content to be no farther from it. My stars, a pretty brag this to a stout man! Pooh, pooh!" Gabriel resumed his seat and looked wistfully up the road by which the traveller had come, murmuring in a half whisper, "The Maypole, 2 miles to the Maypole. I came the other road from the Warren after a long day's work at locks and bells on purpose that I should not come by the Maypole and break my promise to Martha by looking in. There's resolution. It would be dangerous to go on to London without a light, and it's 4 miles, and a good half-mile besides, to the half-way house, and between this and that is the very place where one needs a light most. 2 miles to the Maypole. I told Martha I wouldn't, I said I wouldn't, and I didn't. There's resolution." Repeating these last 2 words very often, as if to compensate for the little resolution he was going to show by piquing himself on the great resolution he had shown, Gabriel Varden quietly turned back, determining to get a light at the Maypole, and to take nothing but a light. When he got to the Maypole, however, and Joe, responding to his well-known hail, came running out to the horse's head, leaving the door open behind him, and disclosing a delicious perspective of warmth and brightness, when the ruddy gleam of the fire, streaming through the old red curtains of the common room, seemed to bring with it, as part of itself, a pleasant hum of voices, and a fragrant odour of steaming grog and rare tobacco, all steeped as it were in the cheerful glow, when the shadows, flitting across the curtain, showed that those inside had risen from their snug seats, and were making room in the snuggest corner—how well he knew that corner!—for the honest locksmith, and a broad glare suddenly streaming up bespoke the goodness of the crackling log from which a brilliant train of sparks was doubtless at that moment whirling up the chimney in honour of his coming, when, superadded to these enticements, there stole upon him from the distant kitchen a gentle sound of frying, with a musical clatter of plates and dishes, and a savoury smell that made even the boisterous wind a perfume. Gabriel felt his firmness oozing rapidly away. He tried to look stoically at the tavern, but his features would relax into a look of fondness. He turned his head the other way, and the cold black country seemed to frown him off and drive him for a refuge into its hospitable arms. "The merciful man, Joe," said the locksmith, "is merciful to his beast. I'll get out for a little while." And how natural it was to get out, and how unnatural it seemed for a sober man to be plodding wearily along through miry roads, encountering the rude buffets of the wind and pelting of the rain, when there was a clean floor covered with crisp white sand, a well-swept hearth, a blazing fire, a table decorated with white cloth, bright pewter flagons, and other tempting preparations for a well-cooked meal, when there were these things, and company disposed to make the most of them, all ready to his hand, and entreating him to enjoyment. End of Chapter 2. Read by Deborah Lynn.